And as someone who sort of steered away from the more like sort of hustle culture productivity where you just, you just get up at 5 o'clock and you just, don't go to sleep, or you grind and grind and grind because that's what we do. And it's all for, this thing called success.
Yeah.
Your content from the very beginning was different to that, wasn't it? So it was always this way. It always had that sort of recognition of life is a bit more than that, than just succeeding for succeeding's sake. We need to look a bit deeper into that. Yeah. So what's your take on the kind of the hustle culture and the sort of productivity industry generally?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think sometimes when people come across my YouTube channel and they don't watch the videos, they'll kind of badge me as like a toxic productivity kind of guy, because it's like, they'll see videos on how to manage your time and how to be more effective and stuff. And to me, that's always been like to me, productivity is about using our time intentionally, effectively, and sustainably, like working towards the things that truly matter to us. And part of the reason, like we almost never use the word success in the book, because I don't really like the word success, because for a lot of people, success is tied up in kind of traditional prestige or what other people will think. Yeah. And the experiences that I had working as a doctor, like from the first year of medical school onwards, anytime I'd meet a doctor and would get on with them, I would ask them, hey, how much are you enjoying your job? Like, if you won the lottery, would you still keep doing it and stuff? And so often there were these like really high achievers who had gone through high school and medical school and everything and gotten to this success, who sort of felt like, I wish I'd had more of a life. I had all these hobbies when I was younger, and then I let them all go because work got in the way. And so I think success without recognizing the fact that the journey is ultimately what matters tends to be pretty hollow for most people. And so from fairly early on, I was always in the mindset of like, okay, the journey is actually more important than the destination. Yes, when your book hits the bestseller list as yours does, you feel like that flash of like, yeah. But if the process of getting there was like a grind and didn't feel good, and you didn't take care of your physical and mental health and maintain your relationships along the way, a lot of people say that like the success is not worth the pain if it means your life becomes out of balance.
Yeah.
So I've always been about just trying to make sure life stays in balance, trying to enjoy the journey as well as aim towards some sort of destination.
And what was the journey like to, create this book and write it? What was your experience of writing it like? Was it painful?
It was, I think it was sort of like a marathon in the sense of it's not like pure joy every step of the way, but like it's a fun experience overall. I'm glad I did it overall. And I think I've taken a lot of lessons away from writing this book that I will then apply to future books to make the process of writing feel more good. Because even though like I found myself in a lot of instances where I was writing about feel-good productivity and I wasn't applying the same principles to the process of writing the book. And sometimes it would take like my editor or my, or agent or my writing coach to be like, hey, Ollie, it sounds like, at this point you could use the strategy that you mentioned in chapter 2 of like sincere rather than serious. Like often I was approaching it with a lot of seriousness and a lot of heaviness. I was like, oh my God, it's a book. A book is a big deal with a big B and a big D. And it's like, oh my God, like all of the imposter syndrome got in the way, all of the fears around why would anyone care what I have to say? What the hell do I know? And in those moments, I had to other people had to remind me that actually it's just a book. Who cares? Like, we can approach it with sincerity rather than seriousness, and approach it in the spirit of play rather than the spirit of like grind and hustle. And so now that I've done it once, even though I literally write and research about this stuff, I still have to remind myself, because it's just so easy for the mind to pop into serious heavy mode, especially when working on something that you feel is like, I'm comfortable making YouTube videos and podcasts. I'm a lot less comfortable writing a book because it's the first time I did it. And so there was all these emotions that I had to deal with along the way.
And it's interesting because, there is that sense of when you're writing a book that you feel that need to sort of do something extra special with language or, dress it up to sort of warrant a book.
Yeah.
And yet all the people that follow you and love your content, I think, well, from my experience, anyway, love it because of how you communicate already and how down to earth it is, and how, you'll read all these kind of complex books and make it really easy to understand and lay it out on the table as it is. And which is, a skill and a talent in itself, isn't it? Sort of being able to translate that for people in a way that's engaging and entertaining.
Yeah.
So were you able to kind of just give it your voice in the end and speak as if we're just chatting across the table?
Yeah, I think in the end, throughout the journey of writing the book, there were periods where it was very voicey in my voice, and there are other periods where, especially when I was leaning on research, because I wanted it to be science-backed. I didn't just want it to be a book from my own personal experience.
Yeah. And
so especially when trying to talk about the science, I found myself kind of in academic writing mode. You know, like this study done by blah, 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 blah. It's sort of like how you'd write an academic essay, but not how you'd write an engaging book. And so those bits were the ones that we did a lot of editing on to be like, okay, how do we tell the story of this research study in a more engaging way? How do we lead with some sort of story? But I think overall it's in a place now where I was proofreading it the other day, and I was like, this is actually not bad. This is reasonable. Because I guess you would know when you're writing a book, you're so in it that when you take a month away and you read it back, you're like, okay, yeah, this seems legit. Like,
it's a pretty good response, isn't it? When that tendency is probably to be really critical because it's your own work. It's a promising kind of thought process to have when you're reading it back.
Yeah.
How was your kind of process of writing? So did you sort of lock yourself away and be alone for periods of time, or, you know, integrate kind of team members and chat and explore ideas? How did it work?
Yeah, so there was a lot of different methods. I tried like every method under the sun over the last 3 years because I was like, there must be a method. The one thing that got me to actually bang out the first draft, because as you know, the first draft is the hardest part, was I think about 2 years ago or last year at some point. I can't remember. 2021 maybe. I don't know. At some point, we did like a team retreat to this big Airbnb in Wales, and the whole team was there. There was like loads of bedrooms, swimming pool, everything like that. And my job was every single day, I need to write one chapter. Okay. And so over the course of like 6 days, I wrote 6 chapters. And it was just like the only thing I had to do that entire day. And the team was around doing their stuff. And you know, it would be 10 p.m. and I'd be just finishing off the chapter and then going down to the swimming pool to like hang out with the team and throw like the ball around and stuff.
Amazing.
So there was something about just having that one thing to do that day that really helped kind of move the needle. But also with the first draft, I think a big part of it was recognizing that it's going to be fast, it's going to be bad, it's going to be wrong, but that's fine. It's just a first draft.
Nice. And
it's like with YouTube videos, I now know, and as you'll know with the short form content as well, it feels really, it feels like it's an absolute shit show when you're filming the thing because of all the different takes and all the pauses and the stops and the internal feelings and all that stuff. But then when it gets edited, the end result is like, it's actually pretty reasonable because they've taken like 60 minutes of footage, turned it into a 12-minute video with like some nice background music, some good animations. And now I've experienced that process when it comes to the book. I'll be a lot less concerned about the crappiness of a first draft for future ones because I know the magic of editing. And actually a lot of the value has come from the editing.
So it's just getting something on the paper to then edit rather than it having to be perfect as it's typed out. That kind of situation.
And I think when I was in the mode of trying to get it perfect as I was typing it out, that was, again, that seriousness of like, and that seriousness felt like a real blocker that made it less fun. Yeah. That also made me like write fewer words. Whereas when I sort of went back, a bit more lightness, a bit more ease in the spirit of play, sort of having like Lord of the Rings music in the background while I'm just sort of typing away and thinking, no, this sucks, but that's fine. We'll just keep going. And at the end, like, some of it was fairly reasonable even from the first draft. So.
And if you've got a swimming pool there to get into, that's the kind of good driver to just get the words down right, so you can go and
in that case it was like play. Cool, like I want to go play with a gang, but I need to finish this chapter first.
And are the chapters quite short? How is it kind of set out? Are the chapters kind of short and easy to consume, or is it a progress? Do you sort of progress through it? And how does it work?
So we've got 9 chapters, so 3 parts of the book. Part 1 is energize, part 2 is unblock, and part 3 is sustain, which are like the 3 different segments of elements of feel-good productivity. And each chapter has 3 like top-level strategies, and each strategy has like 2 experiments that we're calling it, like practical ways that people can apply the insights into their life. And so overall, we've got 9 chapters, 27 strategies, and 54 actionable experiments, which feels like a lot. But in the first draft, it was about twice as many. In that each chapter had about 18 action points until the editor was like, guys, I know you want to throw the kitchen sink at this because like you want to add more value, but like, come on, no one's going to read it. Like it becomes overwhelming if people have 18 action points in every single chapter. Yeah. So we then did loads of cutting, got rid of anything that we didn't think, okay, this is really good. And we were left with 54, still quite a lot. But across the 9 chapters, across the different elements of productivity, it feels a little bit more reasonable.
Okay, so you can sort of progress through and do the little action points. And it sounds like a good idea that it's kind of trimmed down. So, because it's difficult, isn't it, to work through, a book. And but I'm really interested in the 3 sections. You said energize,
unblock, and sustain.
And so we kind of talked a little bit about the energize, and the energy is really that main kind of driver.
Yeah.
What's the unblock?
Yeah. Okay. So the energize section is basically the idea is that there's 3 energizers. If we can apply these 3 things into our work, it'll feel good. It'll generate energy. It'll make us more productive. And those 3 are the first 3 chapters: play, power, and people. Then the second bit of the book is basically about overcoming procrastination and distraction, which are things that loads of people struggle with. Where even when you've made your work energizing, we still have a tendency as humans to procrastinate from it. And so the reason it's called Unblock is because there's like a few different methods to dealing with procrastination in the productivity literature. There's the motivation method, which is that, you just got to be motivated enough. If you're not doing the thing, it's because you're just not motivated enough. You got to want it so much that like it's so worth it. And the issue with that, obviously, is that motivation waxes and wanes. It's not always there all the time. Then there's, a lot of people will invoke the narrative of discipline. They're like, okay, no, screw motivation. What you need is discipline. And I've definitely made videos about this in the past before my thinking got a bit more sophisticated. And with discipline, it's like, okay, cool. The reason you're procrastinating is because you don't have enough discipline or enough willpower, and you should therefore work on that as a muscle. And again, I think discipline has its uses, but like living a life where the things that matter to you, you're having to discipline yourself into doing, it's just a bit grim. It's not a very enjoyable way to be. And so the analogy that I sort of came up with after doing so much research into productivity, into procrastination, and interviewing a bunch of people on this podcast about procrastination is the unblock method. So the analogy we talk about in the second part is, imagine you have to go to a friend's house for dinner, but for some reason it feels really painful to walk there. Like there's something wrong with your shoes. So the motivation method is like, screw it. I'm gonna battle through the pain because like I want it so much. That's fine. The discipline method is like, screw it. I'm going to battle through the pain because I've made a commitment to be there and I'm a disciplined person and I don't go back on my word and I will do the thing. The unblock method would be like, hang on, why is walking to my friend's house so painful? Let me have a look inside my shoe. Oh, there's a pebble inside my shoe. That explains it. Let's just remove the pebble and now I can be on my merry way.
I love it.
And I think that applies to procrastination so much because procrastination is fundamentally an emotional issue. There's like 3 in particular, like major emotional blockers to procrastination. And if we can recognize them for what they are, shine light on them, then it allows us to remove the pebbles so that it feels less of a grind, rather than kind of having to go through the barriers using motivation or discipline. Yeah. So that's what the unblock method is.
Wow, that's so true, isn't it? I guess a lot of people look at procrastination with so much judgment, and they judge themselves for it as if they're getting something wrong or they're not good enough. And actually, when we turn towards it with a bit of curiosity, you pretty quickly get to see what was causing it in the first place and what the block is, so that you can, like you say, get the stone, pull it out and go on your merry way.
That's the one.
Amazing.
And like we're all so wired to avoid pain and seek out pleasure, but avoid pain more so than seeking out pleasure.
Yeah.
And so that's a big component of why procrastination is such a pervasive thing, because you're faced with a task, but there's something about that feels aversive or feels painful. And until like a deadline is invoked and until it's like, oh crap, like the pain of not doing the thing is greater than the pain of doing the thing, that's what prompts us to act. But again, that's a very stressful way to be.
Yeah.
And, if we can target procrastination at its source and figure out what are the blockers, it just, again, makes life way easier when we're actually doing the things that matter to us.
Yeah. Incredible. And then what's the